with other intersections.
The answer is along the way.
Man, an enlightened.
What, they popped it onto their face and they put it up.
His own free will.
Such unthinkable violence.
Didn't really address that much.
So one day,
and August comes to mind.
but we can hope.
Khuấy nắng vào nồi cơm đang.
Same semester I failed my college.
Have lost.
With his dingy vocabulary.
Beautiful when reflected in it.
Specialized classes.
He'd been involved with various older women.
But this.
Stay, and he'd give my grandma.
Not broken up.
Who grew in numbers by the day.
It's been 2 months.
Taste this time, she swears.
Broken or sound.
As the lawlessness of the...
I was 4 years old.
My grandson, who adores and
lived it until I was 12 years old.
Our training course the previous winter.
Sketching and making.
Damon Davis is the host of the Who Am I Really podcast, where adopted people share their stories of adoption and their attempt to find their birth families. He has interviewed over 200 adoptees from an array of life experiences, from awful adoptions and amazing reunions to inspiring adoptions and unfortunate reunions. In his autobiography, Who Am I Really? An Adoptee Memoir, Damon shares his journey of becoming an adoptive parent and his emotions over the birth of his son, Seth. He opens up about the heartbreak of grappling with his adoptive mother's mental illness while balancing the joy of locating his birth mother working nearby. His journey took a twist when he located his biological father via DNA testing.
I'm Damon Davis, and I'm performing for 1001 Artivists. I am a podcaster, and I interview adoptees about their journey through adoption and their attempts to find their biological family members, like I did. And so I've been doing this for 6 years, 230 plus episodes at the moment. The show is called Who Am I Really? And I'm here because I'm going to be turning what I've learned in the podcast into my next book. So I've already written my memoir called Who Am I Really? And I'll tell you about that in a moment. But what I'm going to be doing in the next book is taking the knowledge that I've gained and synthesized from interviewing all of these people to talk a little bit about the adoption experience from the adoptee's point of view. And what that means is we're going to cover things like what it's like to grow up in adoption, a healthy adoptive family versus unhealthy adoptive family, some of the triggers and catalysts that make a person want to even search for their biological family members. What are some of the opportunities and challenges that we have in trying to find our biological families? What are the tools available to us? What are the barriers that are going to prevent people from finding their biological family members? What are some of the emotional things that people think about as they even contemplate going into reunion? It's a big deal to meet somebody that you've never met before that you are actually genetically related to. What is it like to actually try to build a relationship with somebody that you've never known your entire life, but you have a genetic linkage to? And what are some of the crazy synchronicities that an adopted person might find with themselves and their biological family member, even though they've never known each other for probably decades? So the book is going to sort of tell the story arc of what adoption is like from the adoptee perspective from this Who Am I Really podcast experience that I've had so far. It's probably better for me to tell you a little bit about my own story so you can understand a little bit about what I mean. So I grew up in what I'll call a homogenous adoption. I had Black parents. My mom was lighter skinned. My dad was darker skinned, and I'm kind of in the middle. So we looked like family. I had a wonderful relationship with them growing up, and I had a wonderful life in Columbia, Maryland. But what was interesting for me was when my biological son was born to me and my wife, after several rounds of attempting to, have assisted pregnancy, he was conceived naturally. And I was home with him one day by myself, and I'm hovering over this infant, and I'm looking at him flailing his legs and kicking his arms. And I realized this is the first biological relative I've ever known my entire life. And that was a really impactful moment of me, of realizing that the same way I was an infant, or the same way he was an infant to me, I was an infant to someone else. And I have no idea who that other person is. So among other interesting things that happened for me, I decided that I wanted to search for my biological mother. So I reached out to Baltimore City Social Services immediately before I took a job with the federal government. And it was in that search that they were able to find her. They were able to find her coincidentally working right around the corner from me from where I took my federal job. So I was working for the Obama administration at the Department of Health and Human Services. And coincidentally, downtown, she was working at the Federal Aviation Administration, only 4 blocks away from me. It turns out that I talked with her for the very first time by phone and had an amazing connective experience with her the night before her very next birthday. So when I'm talking to her, I'm learning from her that her birthday's the next day. She works right around the corner from me in downtown Washington, D.C. And I decided that I was going to surprise her at her office for our reunion day. So I went to work that day, managed to work through the whole morning with this heavy emotional thing that's going to happen for me later in the day. And I decided I would go over and see her at lunch. I cleared security, and the security guard calls down to her office, tells her she has a visitor, and apparently she got up to come receive me at security. I also have been instructed to go to the elevator, go downstairs to the end of the hallway to try to find her. So I'm on the elevator, I'm looking at my reflection in the mirror, and I'm fixing my tie and trying to make myself look as great as possible for this first impression, and the door opens. And this woman with my face is standing there looking at me. And coincidentally, she's looking at me with this oh crap look like that's him. I had sent her an introductory letter with a photo of myself. So when she saw me, she knew exactly who she was looking at. I had no idea that it was going to be her, except that I recognized my face and my features on another person. I dove out of the elevator. I gave her a huge hug, and we cried and had an amazing reunion. We went out to lunch, and I wish I could tell you that I remembered everything that she said. I don't remember a single thing. I was so captivated by the fact that I was in this moment with this woman. It was absolutely incredible. To fast forward a little bit, I did ask her who my biological father was, and she told me what his identity was, but I sensed in her voice the pain of the situation that had gotten me conceived into the world. So I didn't seek him out. Unfortunately, she passed away 6 years after I met her. With her gone, I knew that I couldn't hurt her by finding this gentleman, so I reached out. I found the guy that she identified. I had no connection with this guy whatsoever. No rapport, no desire to be in a relationship with him, and I was ready to let it die when he sends me a letter. Excuse me. When he sends me a letter and he indicates he's not my biological father. I was shocked. I had no idea how he could have possibly know that. But in an interesting coincidence, my mother-in-law is also adopted. So not for any reasons of searching for my biological father, but just for interest in knowing about my mother-in-law, my wife, and therefore my son, we were all doing ancestry DNA. One night I'm sitting at home in bed and I'm looking at our ancestry DNA results online. And for those who don't know, Ancestry organizes you in relative relation to the people in your family. So the people who you're closest to are organized at the top, and then descending distant cousins are organized further down. Obviously, I would expect my biological son, Seth, to be on my line, but I had 2 biological relatives, and I had no idea who this other person was. When I clicked on the information, it says, this person is your father. And I wasn't even looking for him. And it was not the identity of the person that my birth mother had identified. It was a totally different guy. To cut the story short, basically, I ended up finding this gentleman. I get him on the phone. Coincidentally, the night before, I am leaving for a trip to Los Angeles to go see my mother-in-law. And he's pensively listening to the entirety of my story that brought me to the moment of getting to meet him. And he reveals that he lives in Las Vegas. So I realize I'm going to Los Angeles. He lives in Las Vegas. I'm basically going to be in his neighborhood on that side of the country. So we extended my trip, and my wife, my son, and I went to meet my birth father, a man who had no idea that he had conceived a son with my birth mother, and a person who was absolutely receptive to having a son after he was 86 at the time. not having any children his entire life. So I've had 2 amazing reunions in my life. Super fortunate. But not everybody has that experience. And that's why I do the podcast, because when I talk to other adopted people about their stories, they'll tell me things like, I didn't want to search because I'm loyal to my adoptive parents. I'm scared to search because I'm not sure what I'll find. I don't think I'll be able to find them because the birth records are closed in the state where I was born, or things like I've already found them, we've tried to connect, and they don't want to know me. So there's a lot of misconception about adoption experiences out there. The Who Am I Really podcast is my attempt to try to alleviate the misunderstandings about adoption and expose the feelings of adoptees so people are really more empathetic about what adoptees go through.
We've gathered such an incredible community of strong, fierce, creative women whose voices and art can continue to change the world for the better. There's so much work to do. First, let's finish this job. Make sure your vote counts. Help us sustain and grow this beloved community by donating money, volunteering time, or by telling your friends about us. With your help, we'll be able to provide a wider platform for artists, produce higher quality videos, publicize our activism to bring voices to a wider audience, pay our interns, and hire an executive director. Please consider supporting us.
Women write the story of our world every day. Listen and your heart may open up. If ever you feel frightened of our world that's washed away, a mother is a mother, come to us.